Welcome back, Marvels. Dina and I. Hi, Dina.
Hey,
We're back.
Gwen, we're back.
We're back for another episode.
We're back, and we wanna bash our fellow professionals a little bit. Yeah. So this research that I found recently about mostly I did the research because there are so many people that look for someone who can do an adult autism assessment or diagnosis, and then how many people finally find somebody, wait 2 years or whatever to get in, and then the person says something like, oh, you make too much eye contact, you can't be autistic, or you have too many friends, or you have a job and you can't be. And so there's been research on how many, like what percent of therapists know the truth, if you will, and it's not good. So there's this 2 studies that I saw, they did meta-analyses, and they found that about 2% of all, this is the US, I would imagine it might be higher in other countries that are more savvy about adult autism. 2% of therapists in the United States think that they're competent or know enough about autism to diagnose and assess it. 2%.
2%?
TWO, for those of you who aren't hearing this correctly. And there was something like 74%, they'll go further, 74% will say, I wouldn't feel competent treating somebody. There are some really disturbing stats in terms of people's stereotyped views. So it was 65+% people think that vaccines still play a role in forming autism, which we know is absolutely 100% not the case, which is really scary. And then there's around that same percentage, 60-sums, that believe in this old thing that we used to believe in the 50s called refrigerator mother, where if your mother was cold and emotionless, that's what would cause an autistic kid. And when I posted about that on TikTok, some people said, well, maybe mom was autistic too. Just to be clear, if mom's autistic, it doesn't cause the kid to be autistic because the mom has trouble with emotions. Mom may have caused it from genetics, but not from being a refrigerator mother. It's a horrible, old stereotype. And then the other thing is a lot of what we've talked about in here about masking, where therapists will think if someone comes in, makes eye contact, what we say grooming, they can take care of their physical health, they must not be autistic. And I really think, I thought about this a lot because I was so disturbed by these numbers, right? And there's so much pain out there, people trying to find somebody to assess them as an adult and they can't find anybody. So that's real. I think that when the DSM combined Asperger's under autism spectrum, they did a little bit of a disservice in that they didn't have like that be a specifier. So if you read an ICD-10, actually, it sounds more severe than the DSM in terms of autism. If you just reading that, the other thing was almost nobody gets training in the grad program. Almost zero. It was less than 1%.
I didn't either. Dina, I was like the resident expert in grad school on autism, only because I was at the time working with multiple autistic children as a therapist, as an in-home therapist.
Yeah. If you haven't done clinical training in that realm, you're not going to know. If you've done clinical training in that realm and it's been with like kids who are, I'm going to use the word severe, but I'm talking about needing,
support,
high levels of support when they're still developing.
Yep.
So if people only know it from that perspective, they're like, oh, that's what that is. And this person sitting in front of me who is articulate and talking can't possibly be autistic. The problem is all of those criteria really are based on folks that need a lot of support. And let me explain this to you. It's not that they've only done research on people that need a lot of support. The people that have low support needs that we used to call high functioning, which is horrible because it depends on, I could be high functioning one day and not functional the other day.
Yeah.
Those folks are not researched because they're out there living their lives. The folks, you have a job, you must not be autistic. No, there's an awful lot of us that actually have jobs, but we're not counted. We're not in that criteria in a way that I think used to be put under Asperger's, which had its limits also, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is really real that if you're just talking to someone who's just going off the DSM and has very limited experience with this, or only has experience with like working in a hospital setting with kids, they're going to see an adult like me and they're not going to think they're autistic. Despite so many people have said they did all these tests on me and actually said to me, all the tests say you look autistic, but I don't think you are. I just want to,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
I think that the completely underrepresented, misrepresented section of this of autism is women.
Yeah, yeah.
Women, girls
We're
and
used to
women.
gutting it out and, not, and we socially stay appropriate in school so we don't get pegged early as kids like
Yeah, the
boys do.
masking is in full force.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, I work with multiple people who they don't have multiple personalities, or today we call this DID.
Mhm.
They have different masks that they wear in order to fit in different places. Oh, I'm
Exactly.
going there. I need to wear my Kate Spade. Oh, I'm going
Yeah.
there. I can't wear anything, you know,
Yeah.
X.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm doing that. And it's almost like they put on a different persona for that
Exactly.
situation
Yep.
because there is such and we did this before, this difference of, social anxiety.
Yeah.
We were talking
Yeah.
about social anxiety versus autism. But I think that this is why the unseen, right? We're going back to
Mhm. Mhm.
the unseen things here. Um, the more that I do this, the more I am really questioning what neurotypical really is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
more that I do this, like, and
Yeah.
I think about that for myself, even where I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, I have very, I have a lot of sensory preferences. And
Mhm.
is that because I do this a lot and so I am quite aware of my own?
Mhm. Who
I
knows?
don't
Yeah.
know. It doesn't necessarily matter to me, but for some people it matters because it helps
Mhm.
them understand themselves and answer a
Right.
question about why have I what why is this
What's
like this for
yeah.
me?
Yeah, so it segues to this other part of why I did this research in the first place, and that is, you guys know I'm on TikTok, and so those are videos, are little anywhere from 30-second to 5-minute videos that people post. And this really interesting thing is happening. So many people, especially women, adult women, are discovering that they are neurodivergent through TikTok. And then, of course, people in
Yeah.
our field are like, oh, you can't diagnose yourself through TikTok. And I'm like, I think you actually can. And here's why. So if you are resonating with what people are saying, and it's not like you watch one video and you say, "Oh, I must be autistic." These are people that have read a bunch of stuff, have done research, and every single video they see is like, "I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing." And we have a whole section of research in our field, by the way. It's called qualitative research. So quantitative, you have like a questionnaire, you put it out there, you gather all your info, you do a bunch of stats on it, and that's how you decide what's in it, right? Qualitative is going after the lived experience, and the numbers are lower in qualitative because we don't quite have a pin in that construct yet. So I think that's what's going on TikTok. This is a version of qualitative research that people are saying, this is how I experience this. And then, I may watch one of those and I'd be like, well, that's not so much me. But then I might watch 12 other ones and be like, oh my God, I do that. I thought I was from Mars and all these other people think that way or do that or have that in their head. It's this version of like personal qualitative research. How much of this do you resonate with? How much of this speaks to you? And yeah, you wouldn't be able to get an accommodation at school or work saying, I self diagnosed on TikTok. So the naysayers, and I think a lot of our field has this ivory tower way of saying, oh, well, I'm the expert and you can't do this on TikTok. When I have someone come in to me for assessment, because I work with adults, and they'll say, I have all these things I learned on various social media platforms, and they'll write it out. And they're just like a list of, if I had a list of what the traits were, they're there, they're there, they're there. So it's a version of that, right? I, in fact, found out, I'm really excited about this. I can, on my TikTok account, I can download spreadsheets of comments from every video I've ever posted, which I'm going to do. And then I'm going to do a thematic analysis on those to see people commenting on, because I keep seeing the same things pop up. I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, I do this all the time. This morning on a post that I did about atypical reactions to medications that a lot of us have, she said, oh, NSAIDs bloat me something awful. I blow up like a balloon. And I'm like, that happens to me too. And then she says, oh, I'm a geneticist and it's this such and such enzyme. And you might be that you lack that. It happens a lot in autistic people. And I'm like, there's another one, right? So it really is, that's how we gather a construct that we haven't quite put our finger on yet, that you can't recruit big enough numbers to do quantitative research on. Like, how do you recruit this whole group of people that are out here that are masking and don't know they're autistic? That's where you say, tell me your lived experience. What are you experiencing? And then you get enough of those people and you look for those shared themes between people. And then let's say you get like 10 themes. And then you say, okay, these 10 themes, now maybe I'll go quantitatively research these 10 themes and see if it bears out. But that's how our field originally gets a pin on basic ideas that we're like, I think I'm seeing a pattern here, but no one's talked about it yet. And I really think that's what social media does, whether it's memes, videos, whatever, right?
It's very, yeah. And I think social media is very up to date, right? It's very current. Like research is always behind in the sense of how long, all the bureaucracy, all the red tape you have to go through to conduct ethical research, right? And then it's got to go
at least
through
a 2-year lag.
Right? Like peer-reviewed groups, and then you gotta it's gotta go through an editor and acceptance. But in social media, here it is. And there's the upside is that's very current, and the downside is it's not reviewed. It means that you must be your own critical thinker, your own judge on it. And I think, in regards to like self-discovery, self-diagnosis, whatever, right? The question, I think, is like, what is the intention of your search?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
the first question I always ask.
Right? Like, and there's not, I'm not saying there's a wrong answer to that. What I am saying though is like, why? What does this mean to you? What would it mean if? And I think it's like, if I can live in this world with more acceptance or understanding of myself, and that results in living in this world in an easier, more peaceful way.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people too. The first question I ask is, is it for your own exploration to understand yourself, and maybe even get a frame for your friends and family to understand you? Then, and in the community, self-diagnosis is just as, if not slightly more accepted than professional diagnosis, given my aforementioned stats about how much therapists know about this. But if you need an accommodation for work or disability or something, you have to get a professional assessment. And that's the real barrier in place. That sucks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's a legal aspect of I think, and then kind of going back to, we've done this, not being disabled enough because it's unseen.
Yeah.
How do you quote unquote prove your lived experience of suffering?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's really challenging, to do that. And I think that, this in particular, and let's go back. Like, we're talking about people who are supposed to be the experts in the field,
but they have no training.
Right. And self-admitting that 2%.
Yep. It's like if someone came into me and said, I want you to figure out if I have a learning disability, I would refer them out because I'm not an expert in assessing for learning disability. I don't know why people think they can just sit with someone and talk with them for a half an hour and then tell them whether or not they're
autistic
spectrum. It's because they're going off that. There is one person on TikTok who actually deleted her account, Dr. So-and-so. She actually had the DSM on her video and she was hitting it. And someone said she's a DSM thumper. And I thought that was great, like Bible thumping. that
A
great?
DSM
The
thumper?
DSM thumper, because that's not just how they're written out. We, in our training, we learn to interpret and
Yeah.
apply the criteria. It's not just what's written
Yeah.
on the page. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if you're not an expert in that diagnosis, you have not learned to apply and see what that thing looks like in real life. So you shouldn't be, to me, you're doing more harm saying someone's not autistic than just saying, I don't assess for that. Right?
I completely agree that more harm is done there,
Yep. Yep.
because it's kind of like not presuming competence. And so this is
Yeah.
something that happens,
Yeah.
for me when, especially because I do have a proportion of my practice
Yeah.
that
For
are non
learning
speakers,
disability. Yeah. That's right.
right? And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, they don't speak, so they're not competent. You know the harm that comes from that
Oh my
assumption
God.
is awful, right?
Yeah.
It's not
That's right.
only about human dignity and respect, but it's in now we don't provide any meaningful opportunities for you to
Yeah.
have a life.
That's right.
And the way we talk to you and treat you, I mean, it's awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like I see our colleagues acting poorly. And my note for this
Mhm.
episode is psychologists acting poorly. Um, and listen, I don't think, I'll say for myself, I don't think our colleagues are waking up in the morning and saying, what kind of
Yeah.
mayhem and what kind of harm can I produce today? I don't think that's intentional, to be quite honest, Dana.
That's true, but the ethics code is very clear in our field that around competence. And if
Competence.
something
Yeah.
you don't know,
Yeah.
saying I didn't know is not a good enough excuse. You can lose your license for doing something that you said I
Agreed.
didn't know. You need to know what you don't know. So it's the
Yeah.
limits of competence, and these people are not recognizing the limits of their competence. In my opinion,
I would
they're
agree.
practicing unethically. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that statement, Dana.
Mhm.
And that, in our field, because psychology is very vast as a
Mhm.
field, um, for us, we have to demonstrate how we obtained competence.
That's right.
And so we'd have to demonstrate our process, of obtaining. So a good example of that would be like, I've always worked in neurodiversity. It's always been something
Mhm.
I've gravitated to even before grad
Mhm.
school and stuck with it. But, just probably in the last, 7 years, I've primarily shifted to transition assessment and
Mhm.
transition and like adult readiness, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I went through a process of, calling every single colleague that I could in this space to talk
yeah,
about, to see what types of training I needed to get, I gave them my
exactly.
transition assessments. I had them rip them apart. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did all these things. And so now like my niche got even nicher.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
I'm really only like people will call me and be like, my kid's 9. I'm like, bye. I don't even,
Yeah,
you're outside of my age range. You're like, I don't even do that anymore. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And
It's a
so,
really good point, though. It's so vast because you wouldn't expect your primary care doc to be able to do brain surgery on you. And
yeah,
in medicine, we see those subspecialties, and it's the same in
yeah,
psychology. But I think the general
yeah.
public and even psychologists themselves are like, "Oh, I can do this. It's no
I can
problem."
do it all.
Yeah, yeah,
By the way, if
yeah,
you meet a psychologist that says that they do it all, you should probably run for the hills.
yeah. Run.
Like run, run far away, run, you little one.
That's
Like
right.
just,
That's right. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah. Exactly.
anyone, even programs,
Yeah,
educational programs, residential programs, if they're like, we treat everyone, I'd be like,
yeah.
you treat no one
No,
then.
no, you
Like,
don't want to do that.
absolutely not. And I think this is why there is a real cry in our
Mhm.
community for neurodivergent psychologists,
That's right. Yep.
you
Yep.
know? So, yeah, so I guess the moral of the story is you don't need to trust every professional you meet.
Mhm. And the internet and meme therapy is good for you, in my mind. If it helps you learn about yourself, go for it,
Lots of
right?
people are using that as a process of self-discovery.
Exactly.
Um,
And self-awareness, we can say it again on this episode. I think we said it in
yeah,
every episode. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we all get to connect with
Mhm.
different things, because sometimes, like, why do I love movies
Mhm.
and sometimes and books? Because they say things that I feel that I never knew I could say. I never
There
knew
you
how
go.
to say it.
Yeah.
And then I see it and I read it and I'm like, oh, like I need to put
Yeah.
that, like that's me, you know? And
Totally.
I don't know,
Yeah.
there's a power to that. So
Exactly. I think
anyway,
it's a reason it's such a big thing. Yep.
trust yourself, everyone. Trust yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
On that note, we'll see you later. We'll see you in the next
Okay.
episode.
Yep.
Thanks for
See
being here,
ya.
everyone. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.